way we think about it is that this is more of a human development crisis for people of color than it is a real estate crisis, right? So what do I mean by that? I mean, lots of what Dr. Cray said is true, right? There was an intention to make this a global city, to make it attractive to investors all over the world. That was very intentional. And it's not just Brooklyn, it's the whole city, right? We're seeing real estate prices in Manhattan that are phenomenal, hundreds of millions of dollars. And so that's impacting everybody in the city. We're more vulnerable because of distresses and indicators of distress that have been existing for the last 50 years. Educational attainment levels, income levels, these things are being maybe made more apparent and more painful because of what's happening in the real estate market, right? We're not competing, you know, and it's not all our fault, but we're not competing in a way economically, whether it's MWBE or any other way, right? Whether it's the high-tech jobs that are coming to the city, we're disproportionately underrepresented, and that has consequences. What I'm particularly concerned about is whether we are reimagining Bedford-Stuyvesant in a way that accommodates us. There is a sense sometimes that we want Bedford-Stuyvesant to be the way it was 40 or 50 years ago. And what we have to understand is 40 or 50 years ago, or when Bedford-Stuyvesant was designed, it was designed to be an upper income community. That's the way it was designed. And so we have to think about that. There are consequences for Bedford-Stuyvesant being a predominantly low-density community. Most low-density communities in the United States, or especially in New York City, are very expensive. Very expensive. That's a function of the fact that if fewer people live on the land, it's going to be more expensive. Sometimes we have a knee-jerk negative reaction to density. But that may be the only way that we get to keep a substantial number of our people in the community. I'm just going to put that out there. It's something for us to think about. What is more important, the aesthetic quality of the community, the way it looks, or whether we get to stay there? And that's a difficult balance for us and for everybody. But I think it's one of the things that we really have to think about. The other thing I want us to think about is shared ownership. Sometimes we want to buy things on our own, and sometimes that's not possible. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't participate, right? So if a property costs $750,000 or $1 million and you can't afford it by yourself, I would encourage you to think about buying it with 2, 3, or 4 other people, so you have some piece of that, a piece of the rock, as they say, right? Be in the market. Don't be outside it. Use every means available to you to be in it, so that if there's some appreciation, you can get a piece of it and exit whenever you decide to exit. So I would add that. I think this whole notion of mixed income housing, we have to better understand, right? There was a lot of negative reaction, and I'm not going to defend the poor door, but I think we need to look at every opportunity to leverage the market forces to produce equitable results in a creative way, right? When Bedford-Stuyvesant restoration got started 47 years ago, the problem wasn't, and this is what Dr. Crass said, the problem was attracting capital and attracting equity, attracting capital to the community. That was the problem. Nobody wanted to invest. Not only that, people were discouraged from investing. So we have the reverse problem now. We have too much capital. But it's very hard to stop that. But I don't think it's as difficult to make arguments about equity and how you shape that. And I think that there is an audience for that. But I do think that means that we have to look and be more imaginative about the way we look at communities that we've controlled. The last thing I would say, 2 more things I want to add. There was a time when the city thought about, and when developers thought about, moderate income home ownership, right? And there are ways to do that. And it's ways to do that in higher density buildings, right? New York is essentially in many neighborhoods a high density place, right? And a lot of home ownership takes place in high density buildings, right? And if you could buy, if it was an opportunity to buy something for $300,000 or $400,000, that opportunity might occur in a higher density building is my point. It's not going to happen in the brownstones anymore. Even the brownstones, when they split them up for condos, the prices are $700,000, $1 million. So that's one thing I want you to think about. And the last thing I want you to think about is arts and culture in our community, right? So I remember the time when places like Park Slope and Boerum Hill were occupied by people of color. And there is no evidence of that anymore, right? And so this has been going on a long time. I mean, Dumbo, Boerum Hill, Cobble Hill, no, not Cobble Hill so much, but Park Slope for sure. Prospect Heights, right? Yeah, no, I'm sorry. So the last thing I'll say is we gotta intentionally think about stamping our arts and culture on Bedford Stuyvesant, because the opportunity to do so other places is gone.
Thank you very much.